Okay, hello everyone. It's me again, Razan Hamed, the founder of the Arab American Occupational Therapy Group. And I have with me today um, a student, no, not a student, Amira Ragab, who graduated from the University of North Dakota. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And she just graduated and she is on the lookout for head entry in the OT workforce. And we will talk a little bit more about that. So welcome, Amira, to this meeting. And I'm really so excited to learn more about your experience as an Arab OT in the United States. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we start, I just want to, point out we were just laughing before this meeting and talking about the name. Her last name is Ragab, which is the Egyptian way of saying the G in the Arabic alphabet. So if I was to pronounce her name, it will be Amira Rajab with a J. But in the beautiful Egyptian dialect, the G is a G. So this is just, one example of the beautiful diversity within the Arab community. We get to choose how to say the letters, and I appreciate that. So anyway, let me introduce you to Amira really quickly. Amira, again, she identifies as an Arab with Egyptian roots and descent, and she also identifies as an individual with disability. So she will be talking a little bit about that intersectionality and how that interplay goes. And I would like to start with our first question, which is, Amira, if you can tell us, please, a little bit about your Arab identity. You can choose to talk about, your parents, your descent, your heritage. So tell us a little bit more about that Arabic background.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Dr. Hamed has mentioned I have Egyptian roots. My mother, in a nutshell, is actually Northwestern European. So she married my dad, who is Egyptian. So he came to the States about in the early to mid 90s for education and work as a mechanical engineer. And a lot of my dad's side of the family is all Egyptian. My roots going back to my great grandfather, again, all Egyptian and stuff. And growing up, it was more in a rural background. So my family was the only Egyptian family in town, and the closest access that we had to the Egyptian community was about an hour away. Mm. And then when we moved, there wasn't as many Egyptians around. Rather, we had Palestinians and Somalis, but again, still about an hour's worth of access.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get to meet a lot more Egyptians unless it was either online on social media or it was through my years here at UND. It was a very small community, but it also allowed me the opportunity to meet up with other Egyptians and other Arabs too, who were either like in the PhD program or had moved here because their sibling was here for work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, I'm in New York, and we have a big Egyptian community in here. And I know that other states, they also have like a lot of more Arabs. So hopefully through this group as well, we were able to connect, the people to come together. So we'll be on the lookout, for more Egyptians for you. So tell me a little bit about, growing up, and you said there was not a lot of access to other Egyptians in the area. How did that feel to you? Or did it even occur to you that this is, okay, it's like, I don't see people who speak like my father. And I'm assuming your dad spoke Arabic. So were you able to tell the difference that there is, not a lot of people who look like my dad or do the things that we do in the family? And speaking like to access to, other people in our communities and how that leads to underrepresentation and marginalization.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Again, growing up in a rural community in upstate New York with 2,200 people, pretty much it was a predominantly white and Roman Catholic town, so there was not a lot of other people who spoke Arabic. However, my mom, again, not Arab herself, but she actually took the time in mine and my siblings' schooling to come maybe once or twice a year to come in and speak with my class about Egypt, some of the history. What do we do? And it, again, in elementary school, so kind of make it a little bit more simple, like what kind of animals do we have? What are the pyramids like? What kind of foods do we eat? What festivities do we have? Things like that. So it was one of those moments that I do remember from my schooling that I really appreciated her doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. I'm curious now that you're saying this, and I'm going off script here. How was the interaction between your parents, one being Arab and one being non-Arab identifying?
Um, Definitely a lot of culture clashing. My mom also did like introduce us to a lot of Egyptian foods. Especially the one I remember. The two I remember she made a lot was bamia and macaroni bechamel. So and a lot of Arabs really don't like bamia, but I just loved it growing up. And of course, she also made a different version of fasulia with green beans. So she made sure to like kind of introduce like some aspects of Egyptian food, along with other aspects to the American food, just to make sure that we had a pretty well-rounded upbringing when it comes to cultural stuff. And then of course, my dad always made his fulmadamas too, or fava bean stew for the non-Arabic speakers.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was a tradition every weekend or every other weekend that he just peel the beans over the sink and then like kind of cook them down to add stuff to it, and it was just really wonderful to have that.
Cross-cultural experiences fascinate me, and I really appreciate you sharing this. And for those listening, bamia is okra, which is very, very popular in Egypt and the Arab region. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are not big fans. Okay, then. Thank you for sharing that about your Arab identity. So can you tell us a little bit about your professional context as an OT student? So how did it feel going through your OT learning years? How did your Arab identity pop up or like stand out when it comes to learning, your interactions? Did it voluntarily come into conversations? Did you selectively say identified as Arab? How did that feel? And did you like encounter any kind of unwelcome interactions or conversations because of your Arab heritage? Just, what you can remember from these days.
I would say that we did have a few multicultural assignments. So one of them was a cultural journey that each of us had to do on another classmate, and this was describing like our upbringing, our cultural heritages, how our life experiences shaped us into how we became an occupational therapist. So that part was very voluntary, and she just shared a lot about like my upbringing again, like as a Arab American growing up in a very rural state and then a very rural small city. And then I remember after that, about a year after, when one of my old classmates who went to a different OT school was doing her cultural assignment, she admitted to me that after we did the interview with her, that during that cultural journey assignment for my program, she wanted to be the one to do it because she thought that it was pretty fascinating. So I took that as a compliment. Mostly I mean, it's very rare and far and few in between that my identity comes up. Sometimes, but we also would have potlucks too, and in that case, I would usually bring like some sort of Egyptian food. So I brought macaroni bechamel twice in the first year of my OT school, and then didn't bring anything to the first semester of the second year, but the second semester of second year, I brought in basbousa, two different types.
Yeah,
Types, and a lot of people actually really liked the macarona and the basbousa.
that's good.
So even if, so for me, even if I don't always discuss my Arab identity, didn't discuss my Arab identity a lot in OT school, I always made sure to bring some sort of aspect into it that says, "Hey, here's my heritage.
Hmm.
Please enjoy it."
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think, and I'm curious to know because sometimes we wear our identity on our sleeves and sometimes we don't. Do you think how you look made that convenient to come up or not? Being like, having one parent who is non-Arabic, do you think life would have been different if both your parents were identified as Arab descent?
I had always thought that growing up too. I've always imagined too what would life be like if both of my parents were actually Arab, whether both were Egyptian or whether one was Egyptian, the other was different Arab country. But yeah, I also have to acknowledge that I definitely have maybe the most privilege of my siblings, just because like I pass as white a lot and I can pretty much like not have to face like some of the discrimination, xenophobia that my other siblings have to face, unfortunately. So I definitely both a blessing and a curse at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely do think again. So the University of North Dakota is also in a rural area too.
Yeah.
It's in a rural state. I definitely think my privilege also has helped with kind of getting me through, even if I don't really know how to finish a sentence, but yeah, it's definitely at least helped me again not get as much discrimination, even when I did face it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that speaks to the reality of a lot of people. A lot of Arabs, they visibly are white or they are Caucasian and they pass as white, or and that may complicate or facilitate some of the conversations or the communication with non-Arabs as well. So I just wanted to highlight that this aspect as well, and it can be misleading in a way that you would think just because someone who looks like who passes as white, that doesn't mean they don't have behind the scenes interactions or experiences that may be complicated by the Arab identity because someone else knows that about them. So this
Yes.
is again like why there's a lot of things that fall through the cracks sometimes when it comes to the Arab identity because of that mix in a lot of families.
Yeah, I also think that one microaggression that a lot that has happened to my siblings, but not myself, is them having to like change their name or to shorten their name because again a lot of Americans don't really know how to pronounce like a lot of Arabic names too. So the three of them, um two of the three of them actually had to have nicknames growing up, while the final one didn't really have to, just got mispronounced quite a bit though.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and that's one of the things that you'll have to go through it to understand. It's like, and I had a meeting with another community member who talked about the name as, some we wear our names as, as our, badges of pride of the Arab identity, but sometimes we don't when you don't get to, it also affects, how you feel about the whole experience. So I appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about, how did you decide to become an OT? Going into OT school, what did you have in mind to be working in one day? And where are you now with that? What are you looking for now? So how did it start, and where is it landing now as an OT student? And now you are on the job hunt. So what are you looking for?
Let's see. So to answer the first question on how I became an OT, I actually had an incident in cross country of high school where I wasn't able to wear my cochlear implant. There was fluid buildup over the magnet area of where my cochlear implant was. So I wasn't able to wear that for about 3 weeks. So it just really took away a lot of my autonomy. It made me feel a lot more dependent on others. And back then too, like I had to rely on a lot more lip reading, a lot more texting, things like that. And it was just very isolating. So at that point I just wasn't really sure that I wanted to go on the path that I wanted to anymore. So it took about maybe a year or so to kind of figure out that I wanted to go into the more rehab aspects of things, like support people and getting back to their daily activities. It took a while to figure that out. But then when I was in upstate New York in the Adirondacks for a STEM program, there was a women in leadership dinner, and somebody was talking about how they switched from, I think it was military, to become an occupational therapist. And they liked it because they had a lot of creativity and supported independence and facilitated accessibility for the clients that they worked with. And that was also when I knew I wanted to become an OT. Especially too because I actually did have OT experience growing up. In the school system, and then I also did have hippotherapy for a couple years to support my disabilities too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
So
so how has that influenced your options for your first job now?
I would probably say it's still definitely making sure that being able to support people where they're at, and just kind of also unlearning the idea that like some parts of people like can be 100% getting rid of, whether or not it actually can happen, but rather just supporting people and how they can manage their difficulties and what they're struggling through, just to make sure that they can also be able to have that good quality of life.
Yeah.
And for me, definitely, especially because my mental health really dropped a lot after that loss of autonomy. I definitely think that's had an influence in the job hunting because that's the strongest field I actually want to go into. Just to support people with that, again, autonomy, that quality of life, satisfaction, just kind of figuring out how to make it work in a sense.
Yeah. So it kind of like, gave you that impetus to seek a similar area to help, support the people who had similar experiences like you.
Yes.
All right. So and I'm gonna circle back to the Arab identity to the same question. Like, as an OT student, did you at all pause at some of the things that you were learning about? It could be theories, it could be access to resources in your head, knowing that, if someone from the Egyptian community, if someone from a rural area, if someone with Arab identity may not be a good fit for what we are learning about. So in a sense, how did you, having an Arab identity and regardless of what level or how deep, it was at that point, shape or influence how you received information about OT? So how did our identity is interactive with what we learn as OTs?
I think the one theory that actually stuck out to me when I was learning in OT school was the Ecology of Human Performance, or EHP. It was the one that definitely struck a lot with me in terms of intersectionality with my Arab identity, disabilities, just my experiences growing up. Um, and I also do remember we had to write a paper on what kind of theory kind of best matched with our life experiences and stuff. So I did, I believe, discuss a little bit about my Egyptian identity and that one, and how I felt that it was such a very strong influence on like some of the routines, some of the habits, things like that. Yeah, it was actually a pretty decent paper, but yeah, that was probably the only theory that struck with me, because like PO, MoHo, like all those other theories, it just didn't really stick with me like as a person. I
Yeah.
mean, it's great that it sticks for other people, but it doesn't just really automatically click.
Yeah, and there is this concept about how independence looks like, and there is some
Yes.
about our culture, other cultures, and we are working on some writings on when it comes to what functional independence look like for different cultures, and the Arab community is very family oriented, so independence looks different. And I'm curious
Yes.
if this is something that you thought about.
I also do agree with that. We are very family oriented, and I also would say that we're very collectivist too. I think for me, it has also been kind of a battle too, growing up with two completely clashing backgrounds. My Egyptian identity being collectivist and family oriented, that no matter what happens, your family's always going to be there for you, versus my mom's background, where they're very individualistic. They're wanting more independence and stuff. Just kind of that shame versus guilt thing to just clash quite a lot in trying to figure out what does independence mean. Can we be interdependent? Which that should actually be the main goal, like not independence.
Right.
I'm not really sure how to finish that, but yeah, it's still definitely a journey even after graduating, trying to figure out what does it look like and how can we make sure to like merge both of them together rather than clashing.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent example, and you put it nicely. How, which is the core and the essence of OTs, right? Like we're all about independence. We're all about serving that individual independence, regardless of the circumstances. And that is a huge difference between the how we live our lives. It is expected of children and grandchildren to serve the elderly, even if they're capable, even if they're like functionally capable of independently carrying out these activities. We're still expected to serve and support. So you put it nicely, saying that you're having two parents with two different approach to life, basically.
Yes.
Really
And also, yes, and I also think too, especially I think, at least for me, with Arab kids moving from the Arab world into the States or wherever else they might be. Again, we're family oriented, so it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to like come back and support our relatives and others. So it's just also figuring out what might be the next feasible option that's still family oriented, but also does not drop a lot in our savings, essentially.
Yes, so true. Yeah, I'm someone who was born and raised in outside the US, in Jordan, my home country, Jordan, and learning OT and how to serve the clients has been completely different experience there compared to the US. So I studied OT here and there, and I can tell you the struggle that you have to go through is like, does this fit? But this is not us. So what do you do with it? So this is something we have to work on as an Arab community as well, and to reframing how we talk about these things, especially for those who go back to their communities and serve them as well. So that's a good point.
Absolutely.
All right, so next I would love to know a little bit about the intersectionality, when all things meet in the middle. So you, Amira, as someone who do identify with Arab heritage, with someone who is Muslim, someone who is from the disability community, or someone with disability, how does this cocktail shape any kind of experiences for you as an OT on the hunt for now? Or how do you foresee this shaping your first job?
That is a yeah, that's a very loaded question. No, it's okay. No, that's okay. It's again still definitely quite a journey to like figure out like how all of these different things fit, especially in during OT school. Like sometimes things did fit, and then other times it was just treated as separate entities. But also just again making sure that like if I'm not like the right fit for the job, or like they don't, or like I don't feel like they fit for me, and make sure that they are accepting of like my work and what I've done as a student. That it's not definitely not the right fit, and just making sure that also is able to be reflective of the community that I work with too.
Yeah. And do you think, how do you think your Arab identity will make you a practitioner who may or may not have cultural humility when you speak to your clients and interact with your clients? How do you think this will serve you or not serve you in your role as a practitioner?
I also think it probably would depend on the location and where I'm at. So the job hunt that I'm currently in at this time is actually going to be more in the urban area. So there's going to be much more diversity, and being able to also figure out how I can be able to tailor my experiences, the client's experiences, what I know, and then what the client's experiencing, just to kind of figure out where that fit is.
Yeah.
And such. Whereas if I was trying to find something around here, like a suburban rural area, then it would be a little bit more different, just because a lot of them is just unique as each person's experience will be. It'll still be pretty homogenous to the point where it's like it's going to be pretty. It can be pretty tricky to figure out that cultural humility.
Right. And this is what cultural humility is playing it by ear, knowing exactly that it's different from client to client. So I think you're doing it right. And you have the right approach to it, because it depends on the location, the client, the fit, all of these factors. So I think that's a great point to make too, when it comes to people with multiple identities as well. Okay, my last two questions. The first is there any negative aspects or like not so great aspects about having an Arab identity?
I think it was definitely isolation, and not feeling represented. As early in my OT journey and stuff, I just remember thinking back in my first year, where the heck are we? Like, am I the only one that I know of at this time? And it wasn't until like maybe COVID in 2020 that I saw maybe one other Arab pop up. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's another Arab. But yeah, it can definitely be very isolating, just especially early on too, like when way before everyone started getting connected, things like that. So that was one aspect of it. Again, another aspect's definitely an identity crisis. So just not feeling Arab enough, but also not feeling like American enough. So it's just grappling between these two.
Yeah.
Um, and just also with intersectionality too, like some people will accept like I think you mentioned either before or during here, some people will accept parts of your identity and then other but not others, and then vice versa. So it's very rare to find somebody who will accept you wholly and
Yeah.
as you are. I do find a lot more people are accepting of my disabilities than my Arab identity, unfortunately. And then the Arabs that I meet are accepting of my Arab American identity, but they're not accepting of my disability. So it's very rare to find others that do accept you as a whole. And fortunately, too, in my personal life, I've been able to find some other Arabs who have very similar identities to me. One of them's not Muslim, but have been able to find others who are Arab and American or Canadian, and then also disabilities too. So it helps a lot to have very similar experiences to them.
Yeah, I think you made great points there. I mean, you talked about isolation, and I couldn't agree with you more that it is isolating. And this is something people don't see. It is very invisible struggles when you feel like there's no one else like me. And again, I always speak about representation. That's why representation matters, because it takes away from that feeling that you're alone and no one else is like you. So and other guests on this series also mentioned the idea that that struggle between people accepting one part of who you are and not the other part. Also, that is another struggle that we go through. So hopefully this is why we created this group, because we want to bring people together, and hopefully we feel less isolated when it comes to our identities. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course. And I also do want to say that this group was actually something that I envisioned that hope would happen in the 2020s. So I'm like, if you three didn't find it, like some other people would have, but regardless, it still will have pretty much a similar impact too.
Yeah.
I also will add on to that other question. Unfortunately, one other struggle that I feel with the intersectionality part is that some people don't really know the difference between like different languages, because Arabic, Farsi, and Urdu look so similar. And I remember just having a Islamophobic experience towards the end of my second spring semester, where we were presenting on like different health and psychosocial settings and areas of practice in OT, and the professor at the time just asked me if I could pronounce a Farsi name because my classmates could not, and I was like, they can pronounce it. I'm not going to, but she just kind of kept egging me on, thinking, "Oh, it's still similar." And I was like, "It's Ramadan. I'm not going to try to fight on this." So I just begrudgingly said that,
Yeah.
send a name. But yeah, I was just thinking I would rather take my classmates' attempted pronunciation of the Farsi name than to have like this assumption that like Arabic and Farsi are the same and just so interchangeable. And I'm just, yeah, that was not one of my favorite days that I've had.
Yeah, I mean, this is, the definition of microaggressions. You think it's very subtle, yet it hurts, because first, there's not enough knowledge and awareness about these differences, as if it doesn't matter enough, or it's not like highlighted enough so people understand. So
Yeah.
it matters, being culturally humble and knowing that. And a question goes a long way. And I can't speak to your experience, but like if that instructor had first started with a question, is this the same? Can you read it, instead of like go ahead and do that. So I'm sorry you had to go through this, but again, it speaks to our dark reality as Arab communities.
Unfortunately, it was a rare occurrence. And can't speak for my other classmates, but again, except for like that incident and then a couple others on field work, my experience for the OT program was pretty good.
That's good. That's great.
In
It's
relation to the Arab identity.
yeah.
Yes.
But again, as you said, it's like, it takes sometimes one incident can be isolating to others, and it depends. Some people may visibly be more identifying with the Arab community, whether it's because they wear the hijab, or they have like a darker complexion, or you name it, whatever reason, they are easier to identify as Arab communities. So I would have to appreciate the different subtleties of this as well. So I appreciate you saying this.
Of course.
Okay, so my last question, for as someone in the OT community with these experiences, and I'm sure there's more that we didn't get the chance to talk about, hopefully in the future. What is
Hopefully.
so what is your message to the non-Arabs who are with this group? Everyone who is non-Arab on our group, we consider as an ally, and we welcome them to this group and to engage. So what would be a message for you, or from you to them, about how they can help or how they can support their friends and community members from Arab descent?
I think for me, definitely, that the Arab world is extremely diverse and really wonderful. And also just knowing too that pretty much a lot of the Arab community that's in the States, about 60 to 80% are non-Muslim. They're Christian actually. So just knowing that, and also like pretty much Arabs, like whether in the Arab world or here in this outside the Arab world, a lot of people do fail. So it is very important to recognize that not all Arabs are Muslim. A lot of Orthodox Arabs also fail. Arab Jews fail. Even some of the indigenous groups in the Arab world also fail too. So just kind of not assume and always ask permission to ask a question, just to make sure that the client or whoever you're working with, whether it's your colleague, professor, even just a family friend of yours, is okay with answering that. And if we do technically answer that question, it's because we want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to use this opportunity also to give one example. It's like how we came together. It's like, I knew you, or like, I got connected with you through a wonderful person, Dr. Janet Jedlicka. I just want to give a shout out to her, because this is one way of supporting the Arab community, is connecting people who they have similar experiences. And Dr. Jedlicka is an AOTADI community member, who knew about this group when I founded it, and she says like, oh, I know an OT Egyptian, and she may enjoy this group. So I shout out to Janet. Thank you for connecting us. So yeah, just to add to your point, one way I was like, if you know an Arab, connect them with other people that in the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amira, thank you so much for your time again. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Like, I would love to connect with you again in person or virtually to learn more about your experiences. And again, we're so happy that you joined our group, and hopefully we'll work together more in the future.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure to update everyone in the group about how the job hunt is going.
Yes. So Amira is looking for?
Predominantly I'm looking at mental health, but also open to orthopedics, industrial rehab, assistive technology. So anything pretty cool and awesome.
Okay, so we'll mention that when we post the video. Hopefully, if you know anything that fits this, reach out to Amira. Okay, Amira, good luck with the job hunt, and it was a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully, we'll talk again in the future.
Absolutely.